Hey everybody, KC here. So I just had the opportunity to have a long and I thought really interesting conversation with Neil Stern. Neil is the CEO of Good Food Holdings. Among their banners are Bristol Farms, New Seasons, Metropolitan Market, among others, all on the West Coast. And they all tend to be fresh food and specialty food oriented. Before that, he was a senior partner at McMillan Doolittle. He's been on the job, I don't know, about 4 months or so, and wanted to talk about those 4 months, talk about doing business during the pandemic. But really, what we wanted to focus on was the future of retail. Where are things going in terms of where customers are going to be, where stores need to be, what technology is going to be relevant and resonant going forward? And the unique sort of role that specialty and fresh food retailers can play going forward, and where the interesting opportunities are. At the end, we talk a little bit about opportunities, and some of them might be a little unorthodox. So it'll be very interesting. I think you'll find this conversation interesting. Enjoy. Neil Stern, welcome to Morning Newsbeat.
Hey, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. So it's been what, about 4 months since you got in the job? So how's it going?
How's it going? It's like I tell people it's like the biblical plagues have rained down on us, right? So in the 4 months that I've had the job, we've had fires, we've had stores closed because of smoke, we've had snowstorms, ice storms, social protests and activism, and of course all the things associated with COVID and hazard pay and all that. So the only thing we're missing is locusts in my first 4 months. But other than that, it's going great.
You know, March is a big month for locusts. So
I'm waiting.
I read that somewhere. So you did take over sort of in the middle of a pandemic. Did you find things went better than you would have expected? Let's talk about the pandemic for a second, because we can't talk much about fires and floods and things. Were things better than you would have expected in terms of how the retailers for which you're responsible sort of met that challenge, or were things tougher than you might have expected?
You know, I was on the board prior, so I knew the company really intimately before I stepped into the role. You know, I would say we've done an incredible job, and the banners have done an incredible job of taking care of our associates, number one, and then taking care of our customers and creating a safe environment. So that's been part of the playbook from when we first encountered this. I would say the challenge, though, is, you know, we like to. It's been a year. We all have COVID fatigue. We want to look past this, right? As you know, and get on to the next things in life. January, second week of January was our highest week of COVID sick outs, quarantines, COVID pay. You know, so we're not over this, right? We're happy the levels are going down, but it's still very much omnipresent in our daily operations.
And I read these stories and regurgitate them on Morning Newsbeat all the time. The sense does seem to be that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it may not actually be an oncoming train. I mean, do you sort of sense that?
You know, there's encouraging signs, right? The numbers are going down and across all of our markets. We're starting, and this is probably the frustration, but we are starting to see some vaccinations become available for grocery workers, which is obviously our number one concern, is getting those frontline workers vaccinated. So yeah, I think as those vaccinations start to become more widespread, we can hopefully see the end of this pandemic.
Are you getting any pushback from employees about getting people saying they don't want to be vaccinated? I'm curious. I mean,
we actually think that for us in particular, and our workers who are very, very educated, very aware workforce, we don't think we're going to get a lot of hesitancy on taking the vaccination. You know, we got to get it available to our workers. There's always the means and access. So do they have transportation to get to a vaccination site? We're going to do like other retailers, offer paid time off so they can get this done, a variety of incentives to make sure that they're getting the vaccine. But it's really just getting access to shots is what the big issue is today.
It's interesting you talk about, you know, your employees tend to be more educated. I would think just because of the segment of the business that you're in, your customers are also more educated. Did that mean that you were able to sort of avoid some of the confrontational stuff that happened at a lot of other chains where people didn't want to wear masks and didn't and sort of were in denial about the pandemic?
Yeah, again, largely yes. We've got 51 stores across 3 states, and were there issues at certain stores? Absolutely. Pretty early on, we made sure that we had a senior, and we still do. We have people at the door greeting customers. It's not a 17-year-old kid who's his first job. It's a senior member of our staff. So they're there to assure customers. They're there to answer questions for customers, and it was pretty critical when mask wearing was sort of an issue that we were kind of addressing it directly.
I was thinking about your collection of companies and stores, and it struck me that in some ways you're sort of unique in the sense that because they're very fresh, specialty food oriented, they sort of have an independent air about them. And at the same time, though, because of the ownership, you've also got resources, which a lot of companies like that would not necessarily have, which I guess suggests to me that you are in a really good position moving forward out of the pandemic, because you've got interesting weapons and you've got money to buy ammunition, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's like you're reading our strategy. Our strategy is to be one company that operates unique, local, independent retail, right? So have the best resources available centrally to, some of it's about efficiency. So it's accounting and finance and IT and development. Have those resources available centrally, and then provide the tools for our local banners to thrive in the marketplace. It's easier said than done, right? A lot of companies talk the game of, hey, we're going to centralize this and decentralize that, but we're starting with, as you said, pretty powerful weapons in the market, which is these are great local brands, love local brands in the market, and we want to give them the resources to be even better.
One of the things that I've sort of thought almost from the beginning of the pandemic was that retailers had to start thinking clearly and specifically about how they were going to be different coming out of the pandemic than they were going in. That it was a challenge, it was an opportunity, but that there were changes that were going to take place in terms of consumer behavior and infrastructurally, if that's a word, that would require retailers to be conscious about that. Is that I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think I was right? Do you think, and is that something you're really focused on?
Yeah, I think when we'll look back at this and say, we can break this into pieces. There are some things that were anomalies driven by the pandemic, right? So our food service sales, declined significantly. We think those are going to come back and more because customers still want convenient meal solutions in their lives. But we lost that business in the beginning. As you said, our produce sales, our meat sales are through the roof because that's what we're good at, right? We're great fresh retailers, so we benefited from that. The other pieces, I think, of the pandemic that are going to be with us are it's accelerated e-commerce growth clearly, and that's not. I don't think it's coming back. I think it's raised. It's at a plateau. It's going to continue to grow from there. It's accelerated frictionless and contactless, payments. I think you talked about Amazon Go today. I think it's not even Amazon Go, but it's the notion of, can we make it easier for customers to get in and out of our stores? That's here to stay, right? So we're gonna have to react to those elements, and then also figure out what, fundamentally for us, what's our offer, right? And how does that evolve in the future?
Yeah. You mentioned one thing I want to go back on. Salad bars, they coming back? Poke bars, they coming back? I'm just kidding, because I honestly don't know, and I get emails asking me all the time, and I don't know what the answer is.
Here's what I love, and I think you have the great fortune to know some of our CEOs at our banner level: Ron Megahan at Met Markets, Forrest at New Seasons, and Adam Kellicut at Bristol Farms. If you ask that question to our operators, you're going to get 3 different answers.
Right.
So I've got, in one of our markets, we are very bullish. We have been opening back up our hot bars, our salad bars, and trying to get that business back. In our other banners, we're still shut down or going to a packaged product. One of the interesting things about salad bars is, it's not just are the customers going to do that, but are those occasions still there?
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of that business was driven by office workers, lunchtime rush. People aren't back in offices. We're not getting that business, all the way back yet. Look, we're optimistic that, as I said earlier, customers want meal solutions, right? They want easier ways to get food on their table. It may not be a salad bar. We have incredible packaged salads, right? So we may move that to pre-packed, but they're going to want something that's going to satisfy that occasion.
I want to really focus on the future, but I do have one quick, just sort of momentary question. I know, hazard pay has obviously been a big deal out there. You operate stores in both Los Angeles and Seattle, so you're getting in on both ends of the
Yep.
coast. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. You want to talk about hazard pay for a minute?
Sure.
You hate it?
Yeah, hazard pay is following us around. If you look at where we have stores, Long Beach was the first market to put it in. We have Lazy Acres there, and then of course in Seattle with Met Markets. We're going to pay hazard pay obviously when the municipalities put it in place. I agree with you. You've been pretty public on it, and I agree. It's bad public policy. We don't like that it's targeting one sector of frontline workers versus fast food workers or home improvement store workers. So from that standpoint, it's not great public policy. So we're joining with industry associations and protesting that part of it. And most importantly for us, it's get our workers vaccinated, right? If frontline workers at retail stores are more exposed, let's get them up in the line and get them vaccinated. So that's kind of our view on that topic.
Yeah, why you would put hazard pay above vaccinations for stores makes no sense to me. And I don't know, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much, but it just doesn't make sense. Let's suppose you were already paying, let's suppose minimum wage where you happen to have a store is, I'll make it up, $10 an hour. And your competitor is paying them 12 and you're already paying 16, let's say. It makes no sense to me why both retailers would be forced to go up by $4 if it takes away any competitive advantage you might have in terms of creating relationships with your employees. I
mean, again, New Seasons Markets, we were first in the market to $15 an hour starting wages several years ago, right? So we're ahead of minimum wage in all of our markets, and we believe that a great workforce is a competitive advantage, right? So we do offer our employees more, and I think to share a common frustration among retailers, we have spent money in extra maintenance, extra cleanliness procedures in our stores, creating a safer work environment. We have very generous COVID sick pay policies to make sure that our workers are being protected. We've done multiple rounds of appreciation pay to our associates, over the course of this. So yeah, I think what you would say is to some degree, leave it to private businesses to do what we think is best to handle, to appreciate and take care of our workforce.
So let's look forward a little bit. So you're fresh and fresh food oriented, specialty food oriented. Do you think that technology, as we think of consumer facing technology, is that less important for formats like yours going forward, or is it just as important, or is it just different?
I think it's probably a little bit different. The cliche, of course, is we want to serve our customers any way that they want to be served, right? And that's it's certainly true. My Bristol Farms store that I shop at, there are 8 different places in that store today where there's a service opportunity. Right. Coffee bars, deli, meat, seafood, hot bars, and of course the checkout. And the reason we had that in the past is because we're a high touch, high service retail concept, right? I want you to interact with our meat counter guys because they're awesome, right? They know more about meat than I'll ever know, and that experience elevates our meat department. However, in the future, I don't know that customers want to wait at 8 different places, right? So the answer is I still want to be able to deliver that knowledge and passion that we have around food, which is an advantage to us. But if you're going to tell me in the future, hey, Neil, I don't want to wait anywhere, I've got to be able to make that happen for you as well, right? So we are slow to the game in self-service checkouts and some of that technology, and it's on our priority list because I've got to do what customers want to do in the future.
Yeah, because it's interesting because, in a traditional supermarket where that's dominated by center store, one can imagine technology, whether it's online shopping, auto replenishment, whatever it happens to be, may be more important than in a store like yours, where while center store is important, center store is much more reflective of the perimeter than in many units.
Yeah, we are fresh dominant, and want to be that way. So yeah, I think one of the keys is, and we've learned a lot from COVID, honestly. So we have in several of our stores, we've had cooking classrooms, and we've had places where you can go in person and bring kids, do cooking classes. They're fabulous, but they reach a really small percentage of our customers. We turn those cooking classes at Lazy Acres, as an example, into digital online classes. We have 1,000 times the reach of those. We're having so much more.
What do you mean digital online? Oh, you're. What do you mean? How do you
teach you recipes, teach you cooking instructions online?
Via Zoom.
Yeah, via Zoom, via preloaded web clips on our website. So now where a cooking class can reach 20 people, a cooking class can reach 2,000 people, 20,000 people. So, providing that knowledge that we have, but expanding it to a larger audience, I think is going to be, again, a big part of where the future was that we weren't even thinking about, 6 months ago.
Are there technologies out there going forward that particularly intrigue you, that you think, ooh, I'd love to figure out how to make that work without giving anything away, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, we have the longest laundry list in the world of incredibly cool stuff. A lot of it is around smart carts, self checkouts. We think we need a different food service ordering system, delivery options. So our tech wish list is longer. Our appetite is bigger than our stomach in terms of what we think we can do. So we're going to prioritize in a few areas to make sure that it's technology that helps us run our stores better. So a lot of it is just, foundational things behind the scenes, but also ways to make it easier, more frictionless for customers to get through our stores.
So that stuff would reflect sort of your brand, your value proposition to consumers. What about last mile stuff?
It's
this is where we'll probably have the Instacart conversation, right?
Sure.
I mean, to what? Because I know you've different banners have used Instacart. They've used, I think, Amazon. I think
Yep.
At what point are you concerned that they may not reflect what is a much more specific brand proposition than in a lot of retailers?
Yeah, that's the dilemma. First of all, like every retailer, our online sales last year were up 400%. Small base, right? We were offering, before the pandemic, we were offering online services as a convenience to customers, but it's not something we were pushing. So we're at 2-3% of sales. Some of our banners are well into double digits now on e-commerce sales, right? So huge explosion in that. And then that leads.
Do you think that stays? Does that persist?
I think that's it's staying. It's plateaued a little bit, right? So that big hockey stick growth that we got in summer, it's kind of plateaued, but we're still seeing growth. We're seeing growth week over week in this area. So I don't think customers are, once they get used to a certain behavior, I don't think they're going back anytime soon. So then it leads to the obvious question: okay, what's the best way to deliver that to customers? And to your point, the more strategic question is, how do we reflect our brand in that? And so I'll give you, the example I can give you is in store, whether you're having Instacart or Amazon, do we pick the groceries, or do we have an Instacart picker pick the groceries? We think if we take over the picking of groceries, I'm going to get you a better orange or a better banana because our people care more, right, than their guys who are motivated by time and speed. So we can adjust the experience that way. Do you enter through Instacart as a platform, or do you go to bristolfarms.com and enter as a platform? If you go to Bristol Farms, we can control that experience more than if you go through Instacart. But I think, you know, what I would say where we disagree maybe slightly is, I look at all those partners, whether it's Instacart, Amazon, DoorDash, all the people that we're working with, they're channels, right? They're channels that we have a chance to reach customers with, that we may not get otherwise. You know, DoorDash, where we partnered on holiday meal delivery, they've got an online marketplace of 80 million customers, right? So I have a chance to expose my brand and our great, you know, we kick butt in holiday meals, by the way. We're amazing at that. I've had a chance to expose a customer base that may not know us to a segment of our business. I'll take that risk, if you will, of giving them some data to grow my business and grow my customer base.
Yeah, and I suppose, and far be it from me to back off my oft-stated Instacart objection, but I would suppose at some level, Instacart is less likely to steal to be able to use your data to steal your customers, simply because you do have such a specific opening. Although I suppose that if they could move it over to Gelson, some of that stuff over to Gelson's, right, which has a similar sort of, you know, philosophy. So I'd buy that, as long as they don't do things that damage your brand, right, in any of the things that you're allowing them to do.
Yeah, I would love to. You know, as you know, we're owned by a large Korean company, and you know, e-commerce grocery in Korea is the most developed in the world. In Korea, we operate automated distribution centers like Ocado. We have a fleet of 5,000 trucks that drive the country. We control the last mile piece of it, you know, so we are able to end-to-end control that experience. That's nirvana, right? But as a small retailer, which we are here, we have to figure out ways to partner where it makes sense to partner, and to own the experience where it makes sense to own it, right? And that's I think you did a really nice segment a couple of days ago on that, right? Where do you build? Where do you buy? And since we can't build everything given our size, we're going to be selective about it.
Although, would I be naive or misguided to suggest that because your owner is building a big store in LA, right? So is it possible with growth of other formats in LA that may not be related to Good Food Holdings, that it's at least possible down the road that the infrastructure may be developed where it would make sense to have a shared e-commerce delivery option?
Yeah, in our arsenal, in the big company arsenal, we've got battleships, right? We have a lot of technology that's frankly world class to do this, and it's just a question of when can you get to critical mass where that makes sense.
Yeah. What about you know, in terms of I think the general assumption is that what the banners that you've put together on the West Coast now, you know, Bristol, Lazy Acres, New Seasons, Met Market, is sort of just the beginning. I mean, is acquisition / expansion a high priority for you at the moment?
Yeah, I'll break it into.
Is this a buyer's market? I'm not even sure.
It is, well, you know, our friends Gelson's just got sold recently to a Japanese retailer. So they copied us shamelessly. They got a Japanese partner, not a Korean one. But you know, and I'm thrilled for Rob McDougall and that team that they did that.
That potentially makes them a stronger competitor too, right? Because in a couple of ways, first of all, they're going to have more resources. Probably because they're not owned by a private equity group, they're owned by a retailer now. And the other thing is that they may be competing if I'll make this up, Molly Stone's became available. I'm just, and I have no idea what their situation is.
Mike Stone's not gonna be happy with you, but go ahead. Yeah.
But if Molly Stone's became available,
suddenly
you would right now you would be the logic. Until a few days ago, you would have been the logical acquirer, and right now you've got a competitor who might drive the price up. I mean, I think that was my observation on Morning Newsbeat.
Yeah, what I would say is, look, we love competition. Gelson's is a great competitor. We compete successfully with them, and they compete successfully with us in the market. And what I'll often say is, look, we are, you know, we're small potatoes in the bigger scheme of things. So we think there's a lot of market share to be had, in our market without worrying about one particular competitor. I think I'll break your answer into two. There's organic growth planned for every single one of our banners. We also have New Leaf in Santa Cruz, which is
Right.
just like the killer super local stores in that market. I've got new stores planned in growth for every one of our banners in our markets, which we're excited about. And yeah, we're still going to selectively look at acquisition. The three states that we operate in, Washington, California, and Oregon, it's a $100 billion food retail market, right? We're $1.5 billion of it. So we think there's some room to grow within the geographies that we're operating in.
Does it have to be, to your mind, at least in the short term, have to be West Coast growth, or or could it be contiguous, or does it even have to be contiguous?
Our focus for let's call it the short to intermediate term is West Coast. We want to be able to grow out the markets we're in, and they're giant, they're giant markets. We are focused on the premium and fresh and natural space, right? So we're not going to go buy warehouse clubs or things that are not in our space. And the foundational piece of any of our stores is we source and sell great food, right? So we want to be aligned with retailers who have similar missions, right? It's about, I think what we lose sight of in the industry, and we talk about technology and we talk about all the competition, is we're about great food, right? I want you to be able to get the best food you can in our stores, and we deliver that across our banners in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right that the industry loses sight of it, but I think there's a lot of what I would refer to as so-called food stores, right? They're really in the business of buying smart, trying to sell it, make a little bit of a profit, get some promotion dollars with bags and bottles and jars, but they're not really food focused in the way you are, which is why I love your companies. But what about, well, okay, first I want to ask you, it sounds like you're very committed to the idea that each of your banners remains specific, as opposed to consolidating names, saying, okay, we got 5 names, 3 of them are stronger than the other 2. We need to kind of consolidate.
Yeah.
That's not in your game plan.
That's not in our game plan. I think the power of our brands is because they are as local as they are. And I think if you change that, you dilute one of our big weapons, which is that connection to the communities.
What about acquiring outside? I don't see this very much, and I always wonder why. And it seems to me that in some ways you guys are well positioned to do something like this. But acquiring outside the specific supermarket space, whether it's, I don't know, it could be a technology company that's got something really cool, and now and this, you can do this because you've got resources.
Yeah.
Or it could be a delivery company. I think HEB bought a delivery company in Texas, which was an interesting way to go. Or even a non-food retailer that was simpatico with what you do. The one that occurred to me when it happened was Sur La Table, right? It was like, man, that would have been an interesting fit, because they're after the same customer, they're in the same food space, but it would be all incremental as opposed to being cannibalizing or anything like that. Plus, you could put Sur La Table sections in all of your stores, which would have high brand recognition. Now that's just one example. Is that a dumb idea? Is that just the kind of thing a pundit thinks about, but somebody who actually has to run stores says, "No, you're an idiot"?
No, it's a great. I think it's a great idea. First and foremost, the mission is let's run great food stores, which is hard, right? And I think that's the only counter to that is it's difficult enough trying to do what we're doing without getting distracted with owning a technology company, which we said we don't really have core competencies in. What I would say is if you look at Korea and you look at Emart, and it's a traditional chai ball, we are the Starbucks partner in Korea. We operate shopping centers. We operate stores called No Brand, which are kind of low end food stores. We operate premium food stores. We have a food service distribution company. We manufacture food there. So that idea to our parent company is not foreign at all, right? So the idea that there's contiguous space that is adjacent to food that can make sense, absolutely, right? So I think that will be, as Emart looks to expand here in the U.S., I think that's definitely things that they will be looking at.
Because it always seems to me that it sort of depends on how you define your mission. And it's like, this is one of the things I think that's going to be interesting to see how the restaurant industry comes back. Do they define their mission somewhat differently and say, listen, our mission used to be, we're going to have 40 tables in a space. We need to have 80%, bookings 7 nights a week. And then we can, and after that it's profit. And start to think about things like, okay, do we put a more concerted effort on takeout and make it part of the core value as opposed to an ancillary thing? Do we create little market spaces? So if you're an Italian restaurant, you're going to have great mozzarella and great pancetta and all that kind and bread and stuff that builds on that, which potentially would make them more competitive with some supermarkets, not less. I just wonder if they're going to redefine their space. And then, so does it make sense for supermarkets to be thinking in a broader way too, that our job is not just to sell food out of the store, but rather we want to be in the business of helping people to feed themselves better, smarter, maybe faster. And then in which case you define your universe differently. But again, this is maybe pundit talk. I don't know.
No, I think if you go back to our mission, which is sourcing and selling great food, you can say, oh, that gives you, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do it in a 30,000 square foot supermarket, which is the way we've historically done it, right? So I think it's a mindset shift, which is a hard one to get around. But if you get around that and saying maybe our future is not, continuing to open up these physical boxes, maybe they're smaller boxes, maybe it's delivery, maybe it's last mile e-commerce that we get into, and as I said, when you look at our holiday meal business, we think we're best in class at delivering holiday meals. We serve a fraction of the customer to do that. Is there a way to do that to a broader customer base?
Right. If there were a relatively affluent community in Southern California where you did not have a store, and maybe there was no opportunity to build for a 30,000 square foot store, would it make sense? But there's a little 12,000 square foot space in a downtown that makes a lot of sense, that could just have a fresh food offering or a takeout meal offering, and everything else you could just do online, right? You could listen, you want to buy Bristol Farms, here's the, we'll bring it to you. We can use that store as a pickup location. We can deliver it to you by truck, whatever. I mean, it seems to me that, again, to be, especially in I think a marketplace that's only going to get more competitive, finding those kinds of opportunities seems to me the thing that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think that the ability to be nimble, right, and the ability to be agile is going to be part of it. We go back to e-commerce and last mile. Right now, we're essentially defensive, right, in our last mile, right? We had to get into e-commerce because that's what, the customers weren't going to come into our physical stores. But if you think about the offensive e-commerce, can I serve markets with the Bristol Farms name or the New Seasons name in Portland, where I'm not in right now, but I can serve them from an online standpoint, right, and build the brand that way. So that is part of our thinking in the future. Is we've got these great brands. They reach a very, very small audience because we don't have that many stores. But how do we get that great food out to more people?
Yeah. So and I really appreciate you doing this. I wanted to go. But I'm curious, as you think a year from now, if we were to have this conversation in, March 2022, how are you going to be different? How's your company going to be different than it is in March 2021?
We'll be smarter, right? Right now, when you ask
not
me,
a small thing, right?
yeah. Right now, when you ask me the future of food service, I kind of I don't know, right? That's not a particularly good answer. We will know a lot more a year from now. So that answer is our hot and cold bars, our self-service pizzas coming back. We'll know that. I think a year from now, we are going to be much more evolved from our technology standpoint. We're going to be much more evolved from our talk about digital engagement, but the ways we're reaching customers, we're going to focus on that. We are going to have 4 more incredible stores that are opening up. Some of them are going to be pushing the boundaries on food service and F&B, which we've talked about. Some are going to push the boundaries on on the way we're delivering e-commerce. So I think we're
Which banners? Which markets?
we're going to have 2 new Met Markets in Seattle coming up in the next year. We're going to have 2 new Bristol Farms formats coming up in the year. And then right behind that, we'll have some new seasons coming up.
Wow. Well, listen, I look forward to actually being able to get back to the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest so I can visit some of these stores. I'm really getting tired of working out of this office. I appreciate you're doing this today. I think the world of all your brands and your banners, and I hope we can talk again down the road as you continue to evolve.
Yeah, and we'd love to host you in our stores when we can do that. That's the fun part.
Absolutely. Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.